Started with tonight's finance meeting. Oh, Mr. Braden just arrived. We'll wait for him.
Is anyone will let TA know the door's locked?
I don't know.
Want me to? Yeah.
Please.
Thank you, Ms.
We just started.
You'll find it, you don't have it.
Somebody. We haven't started yet, have we?
Yeah, we just started, but it's cool.
5 seconds ago.
Sorry.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get going with the Finance, Budget, and Audit Committee meeting for today, September 27th, 2022. First item on our agenda is appropriations changes. Jim, if you'd like to take us through.
Sure. So if we look at the appropriation change attachment Exhibit A on the ordinance prepared for tonight, should be close to the back of your packet. Some of the items are basic housekeeping that are done around this time of year. There we go. So just kind of starting with, let's talk about the shaded areas first. You can see there's an area at the top and the area at the bottom, so an increase in permanent appropriations in the shaded area at the top, and on the bottom, a decrease in permanent appropriations. What we're doing is decreasing some areas and increasing other areas of need, and that is a wash. The numbers are the same, so we are within what is allowable by our fiscal emergency recovery plan. In talking with the safety service director and him talking to the superintendent of public works, there was a project that was going to be done for parks and playgrounds that will not be able to be done this year from scheduling, supply chain. You just can't get things done. So there's $100,000 of extra capital projects this year that we're going to move up mostly into the public lands and buildings contractual key. When we start talking about things that happen around the city or have to be fixed, a lot of those things fall under the public lands and buildings key. So since we're not utilizing those funds in that location, we'd rather move them to a place where we can use them more generally throughout the city. The other decrease on the bottom is recreation capital expenses, decreasing $500, and that is to offset on the top there the recreation refunds. They need another $500 to fill out their refund key for the year. The other thing you'll see this decreasing is the retirees benefits program, $3,750, and that is because within that class of people, there was money left over after we paid out everybody's expenses. There are fewer people receiving it than was originally planned. So there's money left over in a key that's already been expended to its maximum for the end of the year. So we're moving that to an area where we can use it. Within the police department contractual key, there were some items. When the budget was originally entered into the computer for tracking our budgets, the contractual key for the police department was inadvertently entered a little higher than what the actual appropriations were. Now, if you remember the beginning of the year, when you look at the FRP, I always say the FRP is not what the budget's going to be in the system, because the FRP always has what this year's budget is plus any open purchase orders at the end of the year. Well, when it was entered into the system, they didn't subtract off, my office did not subtract off the amount of money for the open purchase orders. So they actually had a higher appropriations in the system than they actually should have had. Well, they overspent that a little bit because they thought they had the extra money. So what this does is bring them back up to the level of their expenditures. There's some need for materials and supplies on a couple open POs and some capital projects expenses under the street fund, so we're under the streets key in the general fund, so we're moving money there. So those are those two areas of the gray boxes, and they would wash out. The other things that we see in increases, there's a few funds that are in here that increase, like our permissive tax. It should have been higher at the beginning of the year. It was lower on the tax budget last year, and we just haven't raised it. This raises it to the level of its actual revenue and carryover. I was just looking at that today. The revenue is about 80, I'll look at it here. The year-to-date revenue for permissive taxes, $84,765, and they started with 102 at the beginning of the year. This brings them up to the level of what their expenditures should be. It matches the Certificate of Estimated Resources. The federally forfeited property, DAG funds, that represents money that has been brought in. This is money that's been collected through policing and equitable sharing programs with the police department. This brings them up to the level of what their Certificate of Estimated Resources is. Everything below that on the increase is a TIF. Down on the bottom, there's one TIF, which is the very bottom one, Linden Point Capital Improvements. That's a TIF fund. The other two decreases that are on the bottom, 2031 and 2033, these are funds that, because of the way that we're doing the accounting, we're not bringing in E91 wireless fund money anymore, so that needs to be decreased down to a revenue of 0 this year. This does that. And the employee flex spending account, because of the way that we're now using Paycor to take the flexible spending monies out of people's checks and then issuing those to the third-party vendor that is handling the flex spending account, we are no longer doing that internally. Therefore, we do not need this fund that we used to use to bring money in from the general fund and then pay out to the vendor. All of the TIFs, these are all our tax incremental financing funds, and each TIF has anywhere from 3 to 4 on average, I think, funds associated with it. Many of these are school-related funds, and within a TIF, the property tax comes in 2 parts of the year. The second half came in last month, the end of August. So we take those monies and we send the totals off to bond counsel, because the school gets a portion of the revenue for the TIFs to supplement in the decreased property taxes that they don't get based on the base pilot program that exists within a TIF. So to make up for that, in each one of the TIF agreements, the schools have negotiated a portion of the payment. Some are very simple, like Linden Point TIF, whatever you get in, 25% goes to the schools. That sounds really easy. Everything else is a complicated formula. To the point that the bond counsel, the attorneys who write these documents, are the ones that calculate each time the money comes in, how much the school gets. It changes all the time because it changes based on what the current school levy valuations are, not just for the city, but for the county and for the vocational programs. So they do this, the accountants at the school does it, they agree on it and send us the totals. And what that means is we're constantly shifting money, just that first half and second half payment of the year, to calculate how much money goes into each one of these different funds. Because within the TIF fund, you'll see that like Rookwood has its TIF fund, it has a debt fund, which is the debt payment, and it has the school fund. So we have to sometimes decrease what's in the school fund, or what's in the TIF fund, to increase what's in the school fund. We make estimates on how much we believe is going to come in for each one of these every year. So these do have appropriations. Sometimes though, at the end of the year, as we hit that second half payment from the county settlement sheet for the collected property taxes, the bond counsel sends literally a list like this that says, here's how much goes into each one of these. We take how much we currently have and change them by that amount. So, general fund, some moving around of money, some areas where things aren't being utilized, being decreased, and money being put into funds through discussion with the administration where they're needed. The TIFs, moving money around. two funds being, well, really three funds at the bottom being decreased because their revenues just aren't being realized this year because there are not two of them that are not being utilized at all. Permissive tax and DAG funds because we got more revenue. Any questions? Do you know what TIFs are? Do you need me to explain that?
We've had a few,
We've had some
some lessons.
lessons on TIFs.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take all I can get to learn.
Jesus. Not again.
You should be able to say this, yeah.
Tax increment finance, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you the-
So
Yeah.
that,
No, thank you.
you don't want to hear it? Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I still.
You can give
I
the
think-
30-second for people who might
I
be
can give a 90-second.
listening. Okay, 90
Okay,
seconds.
wait a
So
second.
when the city, a developer comes and wants to take over a piece of property and improve the property, they need infrastructure on that bare land or acquired land to be able to function. Streets, water, power, et cetera. So bonds are issued to be able to do that. In an agreement for the TIF, that district, that area of land, the city says, whatever taxes we're getting currently on that property, we're gonna take and that'll be our money. But any improvement you do on that property becomes what's called a payment in lieu of taxes. They assess the property at the higher value as its improved value, and the money difference between the base value that the city gets and the improved value goes into special funds to pay off the bonds that improve the infrastructure that let them build the facilities. As part of that, they negotiate a deal with the schools. And that's why there has to be different pockets of funds, some going to debt, some going to land improvement, some going to the schools.
Thank you.
That wasn't nearly 90 seconds.
I could,
It was good.
believe me, I could
No,
go
we're
on.
good.
That's the simplified version of it.
Okay, great. Any questions about the appropriations? That's on the agenda for this evening's meeting. Assuming we want to go ahead and have the three readings and get it over with.
We really need to do that to be able to make sure that the school payments can be made by October 1st.
Great. Okay, next is the coronavirus relief funds information. You had left me a message about having to change some of the information about that.
Correct. So this is just a letter that the council just needs to receive and file. And what this came from our CRF, or our initial coronavirus relief funds that were sent out by the government in 2020, were utilized to buy a lot of things or improve the city to be basically COVID-19 proof, or putting up glass shielding, buying sanitation equipment. A lot of money went to the health department, a lot of money went to the fire department. As we got more money in, the state was sending out, here's what you're allowed to use it for. And one of the things they were allowed to use it for was personnel expenses. How are your personnel expenses changed from your original budget? How much more are you spending? What percentage of time are you doing coronavirus stuff? And if we looked and said, you know what, the fire department and the EMS, they're doing 10% just coronavirus things. The fire chief is probably doing 30% of his work, just that. Then you are allowed to reimburse the general fund for all of the expenses up to that percentage. So we did this kind of across the board. And when you look at my office, we're going to use my office as an example. So in my office, the mayor's office created a new separate sick bank to track the hours that employees who were exposed to coronavirus didn't have to use their own sick time. We had a special fund for that. So we needed to create that and track that for everybody. We also needed to track all of the expenditures and manage this fund and all of the monies coming in for it. So we really spent about 8% of our normal time on top of what we normally do. Saw about an 8% increase in the activities that we had to do. Therefore, by doing all of that, we were able to reimburse the general fund for 8% of our time. That was great. That was allowed in the initial documentation. While the state came back and the federal government came back, and as they were auditing this, again, this is 2020, they said, you know what? I know that you guys did a lot of stuff, writing new legislation, and the law director and the mayor working on a lot of initiatives for COVID-19, and recreation having to make changes and shut some things down and change the way. But we've decided you can only use that money for first responders. So they said your dispatch, which we had back then, your health department, your police and fire, and their administrations. So where we had booked this money to be used in these other areas, because that workload had increased, the federal government said it has to be related more to first responders. So in talking with the auditor of state, they basically sent a form letter that looked like this and said, show us how you would shift your use of that money in the general fund away from the ones that are not directly healthcare related or first responder related. And they allowed all of these areas on the back. They did not allow all the areas on the front. So we actually decreased the reimbursement to the expenditures for payroll by this amount and increased it over here. So it's a wash. This letter was the requirement of the state to be in compliance with the CRF funds. And after talking to them several times, they were like, here's what you have to do to be in compliance. So that's what we've done. Now we're notifying council and the administration that those changes are made.
Once we accept and file the letter, it's sort of, from our standpoint, it's done.
Yeah, the state's already accepted it and said it's fine, we just have to notify you of the changes in accounting.
Okay.
What it does in net effect to our general fund and our carryover is $0.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any questions about this before we move on?
Sure.
All right, the third item on our agenda has the very broad title of 2023 council budget requests, but this is specifically about our discussion around getting laptops, equipment for the council folks and support staff. Lisa was able to put together an estimated cost for everything, which is kind of like the last piece of paper in the packet that I handed out to you. Anyway, total cost is estimated right around $15K. Mr. Stith, I know we haven't set money aside for this, but it is a small amount, and so Lisa and I were hoping that maybe there was a way that in some of the unused funds, as we get around toward the end of the year, could be shifted in order to get these things. If not, is there a way that we could earmark funds for next year in order to be able to do this?
I would put it in the budget request for next year. Those are due, top of my head, because it's part of the fiscal emergency recovery plan. The documents that brought us into fiscal emergency, I believe the budgets are due November 1st.
Okay.
To the mayor's office. They may push that up. I would definitely put that budget in. And when they're looking at the budget, you want to look at what's actually, if they look at the current FRP and go across the line, it'll show you what every year your materials and supplies and your contractual has been, and it'll show you what is projected for next year. And then I would start with those numbers and then have any increases for other expectations you might have and list those separately, but again, under either contractual materials and supplies.
Okay.
Is money going to be left over that's available? Can you use other keys for this or shift things? That I would say that depends. If we wanted to move appropriations from, let's say, we just put that money into public lands and buildings and move that to the council key, that's possible, but it would require permission from the auditor of state.
Okay.
They approved everything that's on this list.
Gotcha. What about like from the general fund, same deal?
That's the general fund, that's all still
it's all
general
general
fund.
fund.
Because it would be, it would be a net zero change.
Right.
So while it would be nice to get it this year, I think we'd have to look at where money is available.
Okay.
But definitely put it in your budget next year. Now remember, because we are in a fiscal emergency, our budget for the first part of next year has already been established. That is what your FRP is. And we have the opportunity to change that and adapt that and change budgets by issuing a new FRP or getting out of fiscal emergency by the time the new FRP is due on March 26th.
Right.
So you can put it in your budget request, but any new budgets above what's already there is not available till April, when the new
Okay.
FRP comes in.
So even if it got approved, we'd still be looking into April before we could make the purchase.
Yeah, unless we can get out before then,
Well, that'd be
which would be
nice.
That'd be
great.
nice.
I don't know, how realistic that is, or unless there's, we can talk to the administration about IT, what's being available.
Yeah,
Though there might be by the end of the year, but that's a discussion to kind of start having.
yeah. I think we'd want to probably get both things going, get it in the budget, and then start having the conversations. Because it would,
Let's say you
waiting
could
for
get
a
them,
full quarter of the year to pass before we can,
and let's say
get
you
into
can
it.
get them in December and you get them, then we just take it out of the budget that we're writing for in January and February for the new
Right.
FRP. Yeah.
Great, okay. So, what's the best way to get that conversation going in a way that maybe makes it happen?
Probably initially talking to like the safety service director.
Okay,
We'll see where money is available, if it can be shifted. So we are gonna have another change to appropriations on 1 month from now, the second meeting in October. Because we need to change the appropriations in the building department assessment fund, which is, every time we get a building permit, 3% fee is charged to the state, and that's put in a separate fund, 8081. And we estimate about how much we're gonna get every year. We've gotten more, which is good. That means we've got more coming in building department fees, but we need to increase the appropriations to match what we've gotta send the state. Which means we have to change the certificate, which happens the second Tuesday of the month. And then the fourth Tuesday, we can change appropriations. So there'll already be an ordinance there if that's something that would be allowed. We can start having discussions to maybe move the monies if available at that time.
okay,
But we have to make that case to our financial supervisors.
sure. But we don't know and we don't try, so,
Right.
yeah, okay. Any questions about that? Anybody? Cool. All right, so the last thing on our agenda for today is new claims, and I'm gonna go through these, but I don't think this will take long, and I think we can all kind of agree on what needs to be done. So the first claim in your packet, it's 2 pages for Brandon Cook. This was a situation where the curb in front of his building, when he pulled up next to it, it sliced his tire. Curb was jagged and sharp. So I talked with Mr. Zimmerman about this specifically, and curbs are actually the responsibility of the homeowner, not the city. So the liability on this does not fall on the city. So I don't think there's anything we need to do with this one. The next one from Peter Crotty, that is a 2-page that I've got you here. Basically, what happened, you can read in the explanation there. There was, Public Works was working near his vehicle cutting grass. He left, he came back. Public Works was no longer there, and the window in his car was broken. He is assuming that something happened, that maybe a rock was thrown or something, broke the glass. Also talked to Mr. Zimmerman about this. Says generally Public Works looks out for these kinds of things. In fact, there have been instances where they have caught things that their work has damaged in property and made note of it. He followed up with them and they did not see any of this happen. So what we've got is a situation where a window was broken and nobody saw it happen. Which I don't know that there's anything we can do about.
Yeah, that's kind of seems like it's not something that we can really
Right, it's not that,
reimburse.
I can't say that what he's speculating isn't what happened, but there's no
Evidence.
proof, evidence that it did happen.
Right.
So I think that that's probably a wash. So next is a two-page form, and then the 2 pages after that are responses to this from Tim Gary. So this was an tire issue that happened, I believe, on the lateral. Wait. I'm looking at, no, I got the wrong one at the bottom back there, sorry.
James
This
Murphy.
this is from Tim Gary in regards to Jim Murphy.
Yeah.
So, he goes, I'm not gonna, go into specific detail because typically things from the law department are protected under attorney-client privilege, but, there's some inconsistencies with the way the claim was filed, about the direction things were traveling. The big issue for me here is this trouble with the suspension in car wasn't reported until 4.5 months after the damage was supposed to have occurred, and an additional 5,000 miles had been put on the car. I don't know that this is something that we want to take care of, because honestly, that to me feels like a long time between when the thing happened. Yeah, 5,000 miles, a lot can happen in 5,000 miles.
Yeah.
So I think this is probably a no as well, unless anybody feels differently.
Just a quick question. How do we know, do we have a police report with the mileage, and then he came
It's-
back to us with
it's a-
another claim, that we took another mileage? How do we know that? I'm just curious.
According to one of the emails, one of the mechanics bills that I think the law department had indicates the mileage, and it's $5,000 more, or 5,000 miles more than the initial report of what the mileage was for when the tire was.
Fixed. Oh,
Fixed.
gotcha.
So I think what happened is the tire was fixed, and then the suspension was fixed at a later date, and there's 5,000 miles in between those. However, I might be
Well,
misreading.
Okay, then.
Okay. So anyway, I don't think that it's the kind of thing that we would normally do. So there's
Yeah.
that one. Finally, there was, where did I put that last one? I got it right here, hold on, too many papers. So this was in regards to a settlement request, a $5,000 settlement request. I'm not going to go in too much detail on this, but there was a accident with between a Norwood Public Works trailer and a Rumpke recycling truck. The fact that it happened with city things, let's see, we turned, anyway, it was turned over to the city's joint self-insurance pool through Public Entities Pool, PEP, and assigned a master adjuster. Mr. Strayhorn, who submitted the request, has gotten an attorney to represent him, and the first source of recovery is probably the workers' comp system. So this is being taken care of through the legal system and insurance outside of the city. So I think we don't have to do anything with this either. So
Sounds good.
of the 4 claims that we've got, if nobody has issue, I think we deny all of them.
Can I ask a question about the last claim? I had a question about the
yeah, of
last
course.
claim we were talking about. Did we pay out the tire claim?
We did not.
We did not?
Yeah.
And then he came back, okay.
I don't think so. I
I'm
think
just
what would
curious.
happen is there was only one claim made for the tire and the suspension. The tire was fixed on his dime
Okay.
immediately,
Okay.
but then he waited 4 months to submit the claim along with the suspension.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate that.
yeah.
Sorry to backtrack. Okay.
No, that's fine. So, with the advice from the law department and the situations we have, I'm gonna suggest that we deny the 4 claims before us today, and we'll put that in the report out of the committee.
Sounds good. I agree.
There will be an item coming up on the next meeting that both of you have dealt with before, but the 2 new council members haven't. So in your first meeting in October, there's going to be a resolution dealing with the tax budget that talks about accepting the rates and adjustments for our property tax. So when you filed your tax budget and went down to the county, they have a meeting, their budget commission goes, yes, this looks appropriate. You can spend your property tax money in this way. Then they send a form to us that goes, here's how much property tax is available. Do you want it? And we have to pass a resolution that says, yes, we now want this. So when you get this, and there'll be a couple pages, but you'll see the total amount of property tax that we're going to get there on those pages. We do need to pass that resolution next meeting in all 3 readings so that it can be filed before October 26th, which is the deadline by the county. That's all been turned over to the law department to write the resolution and to the Secretary of Clerk of Council with the instructions on that. But when you get it and you go, what is this? You're just saying, please give us our money. And we've been through this many
We
times.
have.
It's an every year thing.
Yes, please give us the money. All right, so that's all that we had on our agenda for today. Are there any topics or anything anybody would like to discuss any further? Also, we got Mr. Bonsall here tonight, treasurer. I don't know if you want to say anything, or thanks for coming.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it very much. So at a council meeting in the future, or future finance committee meeting, I did want to kind of update you on what's happening with the earnings taxes. I'll pass something out to you after the meeting, just so that you have it. But, we've been, with the changes into, with all the work at home, we've definitely been seeing some ups and downs throughout the year. Certain months are harder than others. Because many of these work-from-home employees used to get very big bonuses at certain times of the year. So now that they're not working in the city, we're not seeing the benefits of some of those nice bonuses. So, but overall, I mean, we're tracking about to where the plan had us. So at least we estimated about 6% down, and we'll hit that pretty closely. So, but anyways, I did want to just let you all know, anytime you wanted me to come or needed me to come, please let me know, and happy to always be here.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, then I think we can call this meeting done. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.